Welcome to Take the Lead Radio with Dr. Diane Hamilton, where she interviews some of the most successful leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, and other individuals who will inspire you to take the lead in your career and personal life. And now, here is Dr. Diane Hamilton.
I am here with John Sonei, who is a best-selling author, Singularity University faculty member, global speaker, trend specialist, you name it. He's the author of Foresight, Awaken Curiosity, Cultivate Wisdom, and Discover an Abundant Future. It's so nice to have you here, John.
Thank you so much, Diane. Wonderful to be here. Nice to meet you.
Well, it's nice to meet you. We talked a little bit before the show about, we have a lot in common in terms of our interest in curiosity. Right. I'm very fascinated in how you've talked about so many different things, but you've focused a lot more on curiosity lately. So, of course, I'm going to go right for that. But why don't you give a little bit of background that led to, you've gotten so many successful books. You really are impressive in the things that you've done. So how did you reach this level of success? You're welcome. A little backstory would be great.
So I come from a single mom family. And that's propelled me to become independent very young. And I started in business very young because I wanted that freedom of money and business and what came with it, which is what we didn't have inside our loving family, but still insular and financially challenged. And so I drove myself to really become successful. And what I did was I built many businesses, and by 25, I had all the trappings of success, and I was styling and flying high. And by 30, I went bankrupt and I lost everything. And as a boy, and I say boy specifically, is when you attach your personality to these grandiose exterior extrinsic things and they get taken away, you really have to question why and who you are. And I kind of dive deep into my psychology and try to figure out why it was that I was doing so well and why it was that I couldn't pay rent for the first few years of my 30th. And I kind of came out of that really understanding human psychology much deeper than anybody else, because I really need to drag myself out of what sort of situation I found myself in. And I've always been a natural adapter or adopter, which means I'm always finding the new things. I have no idea why. From a very young age, I knew what brands would work, and I don't know, I just had this knack. And so I've combined this idea of human psychology and futurism, business strategy, and sort of neuroscience, so that there can be a level of courage and clarity to the people I speak to in both terms of what the possible futures could be, what's the underpinning trends and human need states, what is it in me that I need to let go of, and what is it in me that I need to do in order to become prepared for this uncertain future? So you just spoke about Foresight, which was my last book, and I'll dive into that. But my new book has just come out this week, and the payoff line for Future Next is, it's not in the media yet, so you wouldn't have found it online. It's only starting to come into line now. But the payoff line is reimagining our world and conquering uncertainty. And in a world of uncertainty, your most powerful gift is your curiosity. Right. Because when you're diving deep into your curiosity, you don't need certainty. Your certainty is your curiosity. But anyway, yeah.
Well, that's amazing. I love that, you want to let go of certain things. And that's kind of what I was looking at when I was researching curiosity. Because when I wrote the book that I wrote, I started to look for assessments about, curiosity and see what it was. And all the assessments told you if you were curious or not. And I thought, well, if you're not, then okay, then what, right? So I wanted then what? So I wanted to find out, what do you do at that point? So really, I found a way to measure the things that keep people from being curious. And so you're talking about letting go. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to say, okay, this is what holds us back. This is how we can move forward. And a lot of letting go is letting go of the fear, letting go of the voice in our head that tells us we can't, we're not interested with all that type of thing. Letting go is, using too much technology, not knowing the foundation behind it, or not using it to this fullest advantage, or also just letting go of our environment that maybe held us back, our family, our friends, our teachers, or anybody who said these things to us. So you want to add to that?
Yeah, because there's a few things I talk about letting go of. The first one is the doctrine, the story and the narrative that society has created, including the Industrial Revolution and how it was a linear production line and created roles for us to play within society and within these production lines. And these roles are called degrees. So when you finish school, you were given this option to play 10 different roles in this production line. You were an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor, an engineer. These were roles. And so what has happened is that our curiosity was never asked to be awakened. We were asked to play a role within society. So the first thing is, how do we let go of the narrative that that picture is success? It's not success anymore. It was in the linear world. In this new multi-adaptive, uncertain world, in fact, that could be the worst thing you could do. The second thing that I ask people to let go of is their future memories. It's this idea that we know that memories don't have time attached to them. They are timeless. And your brain doesn't know if the memory you are thinking about is from your future or your past. And so what happens is we project our past into the future, and we're continuously doing this without even realizing. And so what I'm thinking about now because of COVID is we have to collectively mourn our future memories as a collective humanity. And even in our individual capacities, however frivolous our future memories were, from buying a pair of shoes, going on holiday, having a board meeting somewhere exotic, and all of a sudden all those got taken away from us. And we found many of the people in the world caught up in denial, anger, bargaining, and grief. And many people haven't catalyzed themselves to acceptance. But you know what gets you to acceptance? Curiosity. It's like, it's obvious, like what will get you there. You're basing your projections and expectations and memories all based on stories you're telling your mind, not on curiosity. So yeah, I definitely think curiosity is a superpower moving into an uncertain world.
You know, a lot of people ask me how I define curiosity. And to me, when I first started researching it, I was like everybody else. I'm thinking, you know, thinking in new ways, exploring different areas, all that. But really what it turns out to be in the corporate setting, oftentimes, is just getting out of status quo behaviors. It's questioning things to the point of, why are we doing things this way? Why aren't we doing things another way? And that's what leads to getting out of these companies like Blockbusters and Kodaks and all these companies that just kept doing things because it worked in the past. But now we know with COVID and everything else, it's kind of been a shot at us, right? Like this, you can't just rest on your laurels. You have to kind of, you know, I watch some of your talks. You talk about engagement, your TED Talks and things, you know, that it's engagement. We know everybody's disengaged in the workplace. And it was interesting when I was writing about this, I thought about, what did people hire me to talk about? It was engagement, soft skills, all this kind of stuff. So I would look into each chapter, emotional intelligence, different things. And I thought, you know, curiosity just kept coming up in every single thing that I wrote about. So I would have experts on my show like you, and Francesca Gino from Harvard did a great HBR article on the case for curiosity. And you know, and I'd ask all these people, I go, what comes first? Is it curiosity or motivation? Curiosity or engagement? Curiosity or what, you know, and they all said curiosity comes first. So what are you doing to help people develop their sense of curiosity?
I'm so impressed by your research. I mean, well done. I mean, I think it's such an important thing. Before I tell you about that, I think we must also realize that curiosity was never celebrated like it's been celebrated in today's world. Right. You know, if you think about it, we all, maybe not everybody, but many people were forced into going to religious class when we were kids, right? Because our parents thought it was the right thing to do. Right. And not that it isn't. For me, I didn't enjoy it. And I was never allowed to ask a question. You know, you weren't allowed to, you were told what to think. And if you did ask a question and was too curious, you would get a kick out the class. By the time you got home, your mom would give you a slap over the head for embarrassing your family.
Over your hands. Yeah.
Yeah. And so curiosity is only now becoming this new superpower, you know? So what am I? Yeah. So look, the thing for me is that I've been speaking about the combination of curiosity and wisdom, because I think those are the two most important characteristics to become naturally adaptable and flexible. And wisdom is best described by Alan Watts. He says, the knowledgeable man has to learn something new every day, but the wise man has to unlearn something new every day. And, you know, other people say wisdom is having memories with no triggers. And it's almost like this idea that we need to heal the patterning that brings us pain, resentfulness, jealousy, and anger. And these are all just pre-programmed old software, that memories that we've held on to, because I mean, surely we all understand that memories are just subjective stories we're holding on to. None of them are really fact. They've all been twisted somehow to give us our own story and our own identity. And so when we are able to heal our pasts and then engage curiosity and not logic, you become naturally adaptive. Now, you think about organizations like you were speaking about now, is that most organizations have become prisoners of their past successes. Yeah. And the shareholder prioritization of profits also has created a cancer for or given us an inability to be adaptive. They want you to be agile, but it's still a dictatorship of profit. Yeah. And agility almost comes with a necessity to experiment and to be adaptable and to be curious. And so what I think, it's become easy for me to get my message across now, whereas over the last few years, people were like, look, we're doing well. I don't need to be agile. I know, I understand I kind of have to be, and the characteristics I'll get to, but now you don't have a choice, because the more rigid you are, the more stuck you are in your old world, the less success you'll have in this world that you have no idea what's coming, because it's just uncertain.
Yeah, that sense of uncertainty makes people very uncomfortable, and it's really challenging. I see younger generations are better at feeling that desire to get to that uncertainty doesn't bother them as much, I should say. But as you were talking about that, I was thinking about how much what you said ties into my work that in perception, because we really need curiosity to recognize the process of perception as well. And perception, if you're working in a global environment, is huge right now, because I look at it as IQ, EQ for emotional quotient, CQ for curiosity quotient, and CQ for cultural quotient. And if you get all these things together, you can look at somebody else's perspective. And it's so critical, because if we don't develop this sense of empathy, we're just looking at things from our own vantage point, and then everybody's not going to get along or progress. So you need that curiosity to develop empathy. So we're back to emotional intelligence as what comes first. Well, you kind of have to ask questions, right, to get to the next level. So I got a question for you about your new book, and I wrote down the title because I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't have it.
Oh, that's fine. Future Next, that's right.
Tell me about your book. I want to know more about your book.
Sure. Well, look, when lockdown happened, I was busy writing a book called The Evolution of Value, which was really trying to demarcate 10 major things in our society that are changing in value. For example, masculinity. If you think about what masculinity was 20, 30 years ago and what masculinity is today, and the expectation of what masculinity should be in the future, it's dramatically different. The value systems have changed.
Right.
Even femininity. We're also understanding that women that have most probably been very, very successful in the past have had to be very masculine to do so. And so we understand that femininity itself now needs to be celebrated. Again, the value system has changed. But whatever the case may be, COVID happened. So my book became kind of irrelevant. So, I mean, I was not irrelevant, but I was like, if my next book doesn't have a filter of COVID to it, when you're talking about the future and the past, obviously it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So I started writing this book as COVID began and the lockdown began. And the very first thing I wanted to do was give people tools, or mental and emotional set tools, to help them become more elegant, more calm, and more adaptable in a world. And so I write 8 different emotional tools down. One of them, for example, I call the consciousness trigger points. And so we all have been triggered in very private ways, depending on where our consciousness is, taking into account the myriad of different relationships we have in our lives. And I don't mean with people, I mean relationships with your body, with money, with sexuality, with religion, with masculinity, femininity, the government, power, you name it. We've all got a very specific relationship with these things. And each one of these relationships are either immature or mature. And in certain aspects of our lives, we're very calm and elegant, and others, we're children. We get triggered into jealousy and sulking. So Survivor Consciousness Trigger Points just highlights the characteristics that you can apply yourself in this changing world. One of them is called the drama triangle. and the other one's called the creator triangle. And the drama triangle has got 3 characteristics in it. The first one is victim, the poor me. I can't believe this is happening to me. The second one is the sympathy savior. The person is always feeling sorry for the world, but really not doing anything to improve anything, but just sitting on their couch feeling sorry for the world.
Right.
And the third one is the angry person, just so angry that this is happening to them rather than for them. And boy, do we know a lot of people like that.
Can we be all three?
Sympathy or
No,
savior,
can we
anger, and victim. Okay, sorry.
Can we be all 3, or are you one or the other?
Absolutely, you can be, because if you look at violent, terrible emotions, guys are begging the woman to get back together with him, and he's in this total sympathy, victim, and then when she says no, he rages into anger.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's bouncing between that triangle, and of course we can be. Then you get the creator triangle that's got 3 characteristics. The first one is victim to creator. Where are the opportunities in this for me? Second is sympathy to empathy. In other words, I don't need to feel sorry for people. I can empower people. A good example is Oprah. She doesn't feel sorry for women. She helps uplift women. Here in South Africa, there's an all-girls school that she's put up. And the third one is challenger to anger. I mean, from anger to challengers. I need to challenge myself and challenge my community to be better rather than being angry. So that's just one of the tools, because when I was writing about that, I realized that the genius of victimhood is that you often don't know you're in a victimhood. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, is that you're stuck in this invisible web. Anyway, that's the first part of the book.
As you talk about that, it's interesting to me. Yesterday, I was watching some of the hearings they're trying to add a new Supreme Court justice here. And I was watching the comments that people were making underneath as they were asking for questions. Just the anger and the division of the things that people say just blow my mind sometimes. I mean, whether you're for or against her or not, there was no rational conversation going. It was everybody's talking and you should think this. And how do you, is that what you're talking about here in some?
They're all in drama. Yeah. Their survivor consciousness trigger point is immature.
Right. It's really getting
and you know why?
So much worse. Why?
The reason is that society has never celebrated emotional intelligence. It's celebrated IQ, not EQ. You go to university, you become accomplished, but you never really achieve purpose. You've got all the trappings of success, which is money, a card, whatever you want. And then you get there and it's empty and you've been duped. You've actually been duped. The whole thing is a big joke. So of course people are angry.
It's interesting because when I wrote my dissertation, I had no idea what emotional intelligence was at the time.
Wow.
Right? And this was a while back. Okay. This is a long time ago. And so I'm writing, I thought I want to write about what helps people become more successful. I mean, why certain salespeople are more successful. So I had this crazy professor. I mean, he was nuts. I only kept him for like a week and then I switched. But while I was talking to him, he was nuts. I'm not kidding. I talked to him on the phone and he goes, "Welcome to the cave." He goes, "I'm going to eat you up like Jell-O pudding and I'm going to spit you out and you're going to not know what hit you." He was just a horrible guy. I wish I could remember his name because I almost would like to call him and thank him though, because when I talked to him before I dropped him 5 minutes after I hung up the phone, he and I, it's the only guy I've ever dropped. He and I were talking about what my idea was for my dissertation. And I said, well, I kind of like to look into what, impacts sales performance. And for some reason, he heard me say, "Oh, emotional intelligence and its impact on sales performance. That's a great topic." Oh. And I'm like, all right. So I wrote that down.
That's great. That's so good.
I never knew what it was at that point. I mean, I kind of knew the theories behind it, but I didn't know it was called this or whatever. And I ended up having Daniel Goleman on my show later, which was awesome. I mean, the guy for emotional intelligence is so popular. But it's such a topic that at the time I thought, that's kind of a cool topic. I think I want to write about that. I had no grasp of how important this was going to be. And all these years later, we're still, like you said, they're not really grasping. I could talk about this all the time. Why aren't we grasping this?
Well, remember that in agricultural times, the most important thing we could have was brawn, muscles,
of course,
understanding of toiling the soil. working 16-hour days. When the Industrial Revolution came around, the most important thing was intelligence, is working yourself out of an issue logically using mathematics, engineering, accounting. These are very logical, left brain, masculine, process-driven ideologies that we were taught.
Well,
and now as we move into this, sorry?
No, I was going to say that's very much similar to what Sir Ken Robinson said in his TED Talk, I think, you know, of how we're educating people into this certain, we want math, we want science, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And now as we move into this quantum world, intuition will become the most important thing, because logic will be sorted out by machine learning and AI and blockchain and data. Logic is no more something we have to deal with, and neither is brawn. I mean, your muscles don't matter anymore, right? And so what is intuition? EQ. And so as we move into this world now, we must also remember is that we're in a transition, Diane, is that a lot of the world's still stuck in the past, and some people have their footing in the future. And even with the people with the footing in the future still have a little bit of a foot or a toe still stuck back there. So as we're in this very, very deep and massive transformation, we still have a couple more years for us to really start to find new momentum in the world. And I speak about transformation quite a lot. It's got 3 sections. It's got the sad, the strange, and the adventure. The sad is because we have to say goodbye to what was familiar. The strange is when nothing makes sense and it's all unfamiliar and nothing really connects. And then we move into adventure again. And right now we're just in the strange. And we still have another few years of strange to go. So we must just buckle up and be okay with it.
Yeah, you know, that's not unlike what they teach in business on teams and how they get together. There's the norming, the forming, the storming, and all the different ways that we get together. And I think that it's just a changing time. And I think that what you're writing about is really important. And that's what I was trying to do as well on the show, you know, interview people who are into what we can do to move forward. And I had Melissa Agnes on my show a long time ago. She was a crisis readiness speaker. And I thought, oh, that's a cool area to be in. Well, I'm surprised more people aren't talking about that kind of thing. But I think we're going to start seeing more of that too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Can I tell you about the second part of the book?
I was going to say, you started to talk about these different components of the book. I want to go to the next one.
Yeah, sure. Sorry. Yeah. So the first part's mindset, heart set, and emotional set. And like you've just said, EQ comes first. Without any EQ, all your decisions are going to be broken based on memories and trigger points. The second part of the book is trying to investigate the narrative that we're living right now as a society and to question it and poke some holes at it. And I'll tell you why, is because our societal's narrative is always similar to when you're riding or driving on the highway. When you're driving on the highway, anybody who zooms past you going at a hell of a speed much faster than you call that person crazy and a danger to the world.
Right.
And if anybody's going slower than you call them a hazard to the world. And the only person going the right speed, and amazingly, is you. Because everybody else is too fast and too slow, right?
Right.
And as society, what we do is we apply the same mentality to where we are in time. And we think that where we are right now is just right. The porridge is not too hot, it's not too cold. Goldilocks is having a porridge at exactly the right temperature, and let's not change too much. And so if we think about it, 150 years ago, slavery was normal. 100 years ago, women didn't vote, that was normal. 40 years ago, children were in labor camps, that was normal. And so we have to question the narrative we're living right now, this narrative that the doctrine of growth is more important than anything else. I will grow my business at the expense of my health, my community, my family, and everything. So I can just end up accomplished and have growth in my business. Now, we've seen that this doctrine has brought us so far as humanity, but surely we can mature up and realize that there's a longer game at play, almost a more elegant approach and conscious approach we can be having to a more sustainable, more fair process and socio-economic system. So the second part of the book is about reimagining a new socio-economic system that we could all become part of, rather than sitting back and going, well, that's just the way it is. Because that's what we always do to stories. You know, stories go from wisdom, from a whisper to wisdom, from fantasy to folklore, and that's how it's always been. No, that's all we've done. The speed of the car is perfect. Let's not make it any faster, any slower. Let's just do exactly what we're doing now. And so the second part is about reimagining.
I want to add to that, just because you were talking about this, and it brings up some conversations I've had on the show about how everybody wants to be the next unicorn. And so there's this fake it till you make it mentality that's being promoted. So you're kind of touching on that, right? How do we get from having, how do we get the Apples and the Googles and the what we're trying to work on, if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, and without having a sense that you have to be a pufferfish and to stand out, or should we not be doing that? Or how do you compete?
Well, look, the thing is this, is that look what you're competing for, money. The competition is not about that. It's about trying to find a state of flow, which is brought about by the gateway of curiosity and excitement. When you find yourself in that state of flow, nothing matters. And, you know, I think it was Carl Jung that said, what you did as a child that made time disappear is why you're here on earth. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but you know, that curiosity is really your genius. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to achieve something, maybe even having a miserable time of doing it, just because the doctrine has told us that's success. And so my work is saying, and I'm sure yours is as well, is that success is being in a process of trying to make time disappear. If you can make time disappear based on your curiosity and excitement, that is winning. For me, the results will take care of themselves. And so what happens is most people become very depressed because how many people become unicorns? And then you still become a unicorn, and then what happens? They fire you as the CEO of Uber. They fire you as Steve Jobs. So yes, even when you become the unicorn, it doesn't mean it means anything, right? So anyway, so that's the second part of the book.
Is that the impatience that you talk about? You know, that we're just
short-termism, short-termism, and also this, I call it an immature masculine, actually. That's what it is. It's an immature masculine. You know, how fast is my car? How much money have I got? And it's like, guys, I mean, at what stage do we become more elegant about how we go about living, right? Okay, and the last part of the book, we wanted to write a guidebook. And so I brought on a very well-known economist by the name of Dr. Iraj Abedian. And he is he's a professor of economy, and he is an advisor to Nelson Mandela's presidency. He helped write the economic constitution for South Africa, and he's advised the non-corrupt presidents, which have been two, and there's been one very bad one. But anyway, everybody's got a bad president. We all know that. No pointing fingers, but every country goes through a phase. And so what we did for the last part was try to create a guidebook, and the guidebook to how do we show up as citizens, and how do we make citizenry an activist role? How do you become an activist as a citizen? How do you become an activist as a consumer? How do you become an activist as an employee, an employer, and a policymaker? And we wrote essays into the actions, the questions, and the behaviors that we need to develop in each one of these, so that whatever role you're playing in society, how do you become more actively involved in reimagining a new world? Because, you know, in the 14th century, the Black Death devastated Europe. That saw the end of feudalism. It saw the rise of wider dispersal of agricultural knowledge. It saw a new labor force being birthed. And it saw the beginning of the Italian Renaissance in the late 15th century. In other words, we needed the death of something to have the birth of something. And look what's happening around us. We're having the death and destruction of old ways of thinking. The challenge from the younger generation to the older generation. And you know what the main challenge is? Is the way you measure success is broken and not leaving a world for us. So when you're dead, you've got lots of money, and we are dealing with all sorts of issues that have been left behind. So it's that dichotomy where we're trying to get people to be active involvement in the Renaissance that's coming, because one will be birthed again, and it will be happening over the next few years. And that just is obvious to all of us because everything goes in cycles. And so the book is really about mindset, heart set, the ability to reimagine and question the narrative we are living right now. And thirdly, a guidebook to try and get us to become more active participants in Future Next.
Well, that's awesome. And I love that you start with mindset, and some of the work of Carol Dweck was so important to my research and curiosity, and how we look at things of a growth versus fixed mindset, and how we just, I know we use that word a lot to mean different things, but I think for curiosity's sake, I think that we don't recognize so much how much things impact us from what we either tell ourselves or what other people tell us. And I think what other people tell us will form what we tell ourselves. And so we have this monologue that goes along in our head. I think of it, I called it our assumptions, and what I named it, which it's just that voice. We all have that voice that tells us something. And I don't know if you ever had Dr. Katz. We have this cartoon thing that have you ever seen this cartoon show, Dr. Katz?
I haven't.
It's kind of like a Bob Newhart for cartoon kind of thing, where he's a psychologist, but it's for kids, right? But then it's kind of more for adults in a way. And he'd have these comedians come in every week on the show as the patients on the couch. And I remember the one patient, he said something like, I don't mind the voice in my head so much. I just wish it didn't have a lisp or a stutter or whatever he said, and I think that was such a funny thing to me. But there is this voice in our head that we listen to that tells us that this is what we should do. And so that's all confirmed. We talk about confirmation bias a lot in my book I co-wrote with Maya Zelahich. We talk about, you watch things, you read things, you reinforce what makes you feel comfortable. So how are you getting people out of doing that?
Okay, so two ways. The first one is growth mindsets and anti-fragile. You've obviously heard of anti-fragile with Nassim Taleb. The idea that if you drop something fragile, it breaks. It drops something anti-fragile, it gets stronger. Growth mindset is pretty much the same thing. I think if you've read the book, I'm sure you have, but they were doing a test with kids that were trying to solve maths problems that they knew they wouldn't be able to solve, and they were still loving the process. And it's in the loving the pain, loving the challenge that gives us this opportunity to have a growth mindset, because what you're seeking is the challenge, not the solution almost, So the way we ascertain and give ourselves permission at what time of the process or where in the process do we allow ourselves dopamine. And so they've done the test around these Navy SEALs guys, where for them, the dopamine hits are not coming from finishing, but during. And that becomes a very big part of successful, passion-led entrepreneurs, because they're in their curiosity. The dopamine hit is happening because of the curiosity all the time, and the solution will eventually come to play, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So if we start explaining the neuroplasticity to people, for them to understand that their programming from a very young age has been faulty, because the programming has said, I don't care how hard you're studying, I don't care how hard you're practicing. If you don't win the match, you're a loser. And if you don't get an A, you're a loser. In other words, I'm not giving myself any dopamine, and then, oh no, I didn't. Okay, I also didn't get any dopamine. So I just get depressed.
Right.
And if I do get an A, I get a blimp of dopamine and on to the next goal. So that's the first thing, is like, look, it's just about recalibrating your neuroscience when you become aware of how you allow dopamine to arrive at you. So that's the first way.
Mm-hmm.
The second way is that many of the voices inside our heads, the noisy roommate, as he or they are often called, is very much based on memories. And again, this idea of memories and how it impacts our future and our voice inside our heads is based on either whether we are keen and are we holding on to painful memories because it gives us identity, and then that infiltrates a voice into our heads and a mistrust into the world. Yeah. And so for me, it's one, becoming aware of dopamine and how you play with it. And the second thing is healing your past, letting people go, stop expecting perfection from people that you've engaged with in your past, putting them down from the pedestal and heal it so that you can have a future without any sort of baggage, I guess.
Yeah, and that's so great. And I think that, when you talk about dopamine, we know, you get this rush of dopamine from curiosity. And it was interesting that the Max Planck Institute coined the term, the curiosity gene. And we need this curiosity to, if everybody has it, and you get this rush of dopamine when you do this. But, even birds, and, if it didn't have this curiosity gene, it would fly around a bush and then run out of berries if it didn't have the desire to explore. So we want that. But I was thinking, just that there's just so many companies that really do really well at this. And I want to talk about some of those companies, but as you talked about this voice in your head, I wanted to think, when I get on stage, sometimes I'll hold up a bottle of water, and I'll say, how much does this weigh, when we're talking about assumptions, and the things that we tell ourselves. And everybody will yell out, 20 ounces, 10 ounces, whatever they say, and then you go, well, it doesn't matter how much it weighs. What matters is how long I hold it. You hold it for a little bit.
Oh, very nice.
Hold it for a little bit longer. It's heavy. By the end of the day, your arm's paralyzed. And that's how our assumptions, that voice, right? We hold on to these things. But I've seen, and getting back to what I wanted to say about these companies, developing curiosity in their employees. I think that a lot of times we hold on to, like we said, old ways of doing things. And I work with great companies throughout the world, Novartis, Verizon, different companies that do really big things to try and develop the sense of culture of this curiosity-based culture. What are you seeing companies doing? Are you focusing more on individuals, or do you go to companies and talk to them about this curiosity-based culture?
So, I think as a futurist or future strategist, is my job is to get the leadership inside organizations to think about things that make them uncomfortable, and curiosity is one of them.
Yeah.
I'm not there to hold their hands to look at how they implement it. It's not my personality. So for me, it's really about leading them into the story to get them to ask more questions about more things that they should be doing.
Yeah.
So for me, I often say also, it's like, you almost got to realize is that it's very tough teaching an old dog new tricks. What you have to almost do, and many businesses I'm watching do this, are starting new parallel businesses, solving the problems that they're trying to solve with brand new capabilities and abilities. People that understand data science, machine learning, more creative, while you've still got your today, I call them today and tomorrow teams. You got these today teams that have never been curious, and trying to change a culture from within is often very, very difficult, because how they were hired, what they were trained for, and how they measure success is not based on curiosity. It's based on outcomes.
Yeah.
What we've started to see, both at Singularity and Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies, is the people that are really starting to win and get traction are developing parallel businesses, tomorrow teams. A great example of this is Japan Airlines. Japan Airlines have spent $70 million developing the future of flights, future of travel. Okay. And the future of travel, it's a totally different business, because the future of travel has got nothing to do with a plane, an airport, or an engineer or a pilot. It's got to do with a suit that you put on with a virtual reality, and a suit that gives you visceral feelings of wherever you are, with pain, hit, wind, cold, hot. And so what they've started doing is you can go anywhere in the world, in fact, anywhere in the universe. You can go to Mars in your suit. And they've already started testing it with paraplegic people, handicapped people that have never had the opportunity to do those sort of things. So you understand that the today team doesn't necessarily always have to be curious. And I think what we do is we find the toughest time trying to change 60-year-old Jeff's personality 5 years before he's going to retire. You know what I mean? He doesn't give a shit. I mean, he's like, okay, whatever. And so what we got to do is we've got to almost create this new parallel curious team that's solving the problem for the future, while this company solves the problem for the now and the past. And so we see this quite a lot happening.
Well, I want to have one of those suits. You've got me very interested in that.
Japan Airlines. Check them out.
Japan Airlines. I'm definitely going to look that. It's funny to see the things that people are doing. Have you seen with COVID, some people miss traveling so much that they go to the airport just to go to the airport, and they don't fly anywhere. They get on the plane.
No, there's one worse. You can get on
around and comes right back
to nowhere. Exactly.
I'm thinking, who's missing that? I'm not on that. I don't get that at all.
No, what's the point of that? How depressing to get off a plane and get out at the same place you get on. You're like, what was that for?
I don't know. I think at first they didn't even take off. They got on the plane and then got off. I'm thinking, I don't know what's worse. I think it's all bad, but that's not what I'd be interested in. But hey, whatever is the thing.
Whatever floats your boat, you know?
Right.
Yeah, that's
but
crazy.
I think I wanted to ask you about singularity because you brought that up. And you were one of the first people, well, tell me your background with singularity. I don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah, sure. No problem. You know, I was watching Singularity University for many, many years. And you must understand, I used to live in South Africa. I'm in South Africa right now, but I actually live between London and Dubai. But because of COVID, I came back to be with family. Mm-hmm. But, you know, we're very far flung from you guys. So, and you guys own all the media in the world. Well, most of the media. So all of us are living America's life. I mean, more people in the world know about your presidential election than it doesn't even affect us. But because of all no problem. But we enjoy the soap opera. It's a comedic horror. We laugh and we're like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. And we laugh. And so, so for us, understand that America has got a very like a pedestal place because we're all the way out here in Africa.
Right.
So I used to watch Singularity online and I was a big fan and I obviously just love the whole world around it. And then South Africa announced that they're going to have a summit, a Singularity Summit. So I got tickets and I went there and I was so excited. I kind of thought that the speakers would arrive and angels and harps would be coming on the sides of them. I don't know what I was expecting. I don't know, but I was expecting unbelievable. And, you know, they came on and they were good, but they weren't. I was like, it didn't blow my mind. No harps, no angels. So I got hold of I remember I wrote the email to my PA and I said, look, I'd been accepted to go for an executive program in San Francisco. I'd applied, been accepted and paid for it to go with 100 execs to go for a week long in San Francisco to their campus anyway, just because I wanted to go and experience the executive program.
Yeah.
And so I asked my PA to make an appointment with me to get interviewed to be part of faculty of Singularity once I've seen them speak, because I was like, I can do that. I've done stuff like that.
Right.
And so I got an interview with them on a Wednesday morning and I'd arrived for the conference on the Sunday. And just before the conference, I'd been booked for an Autodesk event in South Africa. And I was the keynote speaker and it went really well. And I got onto the plane straight after that and I flew to San Francisco, arrived on Sunday night. And Sunday night, they told us that there's this guy called Jonathan Knowles that is going to walk with us from our hotel to the donut shop that him and Steve Jobs used to sit at and design Apple products at, because he worked with Steve Jobs for 14 years. And so with much excitement, I mean, I was up and there was only 20 of the execs. That wasn't compulsory, but I was the first guy there. And I met Jonathan Knowles, and all the way there and all the way back, I am asking 1,000,001 questions. You can see I'm enthusiastic just nature-wise and also because it's a topic that I love so much. And so I asked 150 questions. In fact, I asked more questions than anybody else. And we walked back to the hotel. And while I was walking back to the hotel with him before we went to class, I made a Facebook video. And I started explaining to my friends, I can't believe it. I'm at Apple, the Loop, it's right here. I'm around Apple businesses. I mean, this is all very amazing to us all the way here from Africa. And I got Jonathan Knowles to come on the camera and I brought him to the camera. I said, Jonathan, say hi to my friends in South Africa. He started chatting to them and we forgot about it. About an hour later, I get a message from the people that organized the Autodesk conference. And they said, hey, you with JK? I don't know, who's JK? They're like, Jonathan Knowles. I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Jonathan Knowles took us on the tour. Yeah. He says, you know, he's a fellow at Autodesk. We bring him in for all sorts of different things. We love Jonathan Knowles. Please tell us we send our regards. Great, I'll do that. Later at college, I saw Jonathan. I said, look, these two ladies, I've forgotten their names, send their love. And he says, oh, that's amazing. They're amazing. I love them so much. Please send my love back. Great. Tuesday morning, he's doing the same walk, but this time he's talking about Obama. And he worked for Obama for 4 years as head of technology or something like that. I'm a huge Obama fan. So again, I'm there asking 1,000,001 questions. I'm just like so enthusiastic. While we're walking back to the hotel, he says to me, are you John Sonei? I said, yes. He said, are you coming for an interview tomorrow? I said, yes. He says, why don't you come in the car with me today and I'll drive you to the college and then let the other people go on the bus. I said, no problem. So we had a long chat. He's big into ocean conservation. So we chatted about that and just chatted. Got to the university. I said to him, Jonathan, what do you do here? Like, what role do you play at Singularity? He says, I'm the head of faculty. I choose the speakers and the strategists that join Singularity. So I was like, no way. He says, I'll see you at your interview tomorrow. I said, great. I'm looking forward to it. And arrived the next day and there was a letter from him. And he said, congratulations, you're faculty. Love your energy. Love everything you do. I don't need to interview you. So he had spoken to the girls from Autodesk. They had given him a brief. He had spent 2 days with me and I didn't even get interviewed. So I became a faculty member by pure enthusiasm and being curious about the subject that I'm about.
I love that. That's such a great story. And that's such a great place to end this conversation because
Sure.
I'm very excited about you having another book. And I know I love watching you on Ira Wolf's presentations. I've been on his events as well, and he's an amazing guy. And this was so much fun to have you on the show. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to follow you. They obviously know that you're at Singularity and in some of these places, but where is the best place for them to follow you and get more about your books and your work?
Sure. Thank you so much. Look, out of 7.5 billion people in the world, there's only one John Sonei. Lucky me. I have no idea why. I've checked for other John Soneis. There isn't one. So look, I'm on Instagram, on LinkedIn. I'm online. I'm continuously sharing. Every time I research something that excites me, I can't help but share it. So join me on any of those. It'll be wonderful to have you join me. And when you do join, please message me and tell me why you've joined and you saw me on Dr. Diane Hamilton's podcast, and that'll be great for you to join and we'll say hi. And hopefully we'll see each other in real life one day.
Well, that would be great. And that is wonderful that you have the only name. You know, the funny thing is that there is another Dr. Diane Hamilton, who's this yoga meditation type, really calm person, exact opposite of me. And somebody asked me to be on their show once, on this meditation show, and she was just so calm. And I thought, oh, she had to have asked the wrong Diane Hamilton.
Wow.
And after the show, I asked her, and she said no, but I thought, I'm not so sure.
You're halfway through. She was like, oh my God, what have we done?
What have we done? But it was so nice to have you on the show, John. Thank you so much. And we will be back right after this message.